Carter Jacobs adjusted the straps of his backpack as he stepped off the spacecraft, his boots crunching on the gravel of Zaloria's landing zone. The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar flora, pungent and sweet. The planet's vibrant purple sky cast a surreal hue over everything, making the landscape appear almost dreamlike. "Watch your step, Carter," called out Dr. Renata Kim, the mission's lead botanist and Carter's mentor. She was busy setting up their portable lab a few yards away. "The ground here is nothing like back on Earth. It's slippery." "Got it, thanks," Carter replied, scanning the area with keen interest. He was the youngest member of the team, a recent PhD graduate in ethnobotany, with a particular interest in alien ecosystems. As he approached Dr. Kim, another figure approached from the direction of a small settlement nestled between two towering ridges. "Must be one of the locals," Carter muttered, squinting against the bright reflection of Zaloria's twin suns. The figure, a middle-aged man with deep-set eyes and weathered skin, extended a hand as he neared. "I'm Halgren. I was assigned to assist your team during your stay on Zaloria." "Welcome. Pleasure to meet you, Halgren," Carter said, shaking his hand. "I'm Carter Jacobs, and this is Dr. Renata Kim." Dr. Kim smiled briefly, her attention mostly on her equipment. "Thank you for the assistance, Halgren. We've heard the terrain can be quite challenging." "It can be," Halgren agreed, nodding. "Especially if you plan to study the Varelia tribe. They live in the most remote and inhospitable parts of our planet." Carter's eyes lit up at the mention of the tribe. "Yes, the Varelia. I've read they have unique botanical knowledge. Do you think they'd be willing to share?" Halgren's expression turned solemn. "The Varelia are not fond of strangers, especially humans. They're known as quite the insatiable group. Always seeking, always curious, but on their terms." "Sounds like they're misunderstood more than anything," Carter mused. "Maybe we can learn from each other." "I'd love the chance to meet them." Dr. Kim glanced up from her work, interjecting with a hint of caution in her tone. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Carter. We're here to study plants, not disrupt local customs or intrude on native populations without clear invitations." Carter nodded, understanding the delicate balance they needed to maintain. "Of course, Dr. Kim. It's just exciting. The potential for new discoveries." Halgren smiled, seemingly reassured by Carter's respectful enthusiasm. "If you're serious about this, I might know someone who could help. A contact within the tribe. But it will take some time to arrange a meeting." "That would be incredible," Carter replied eagerly. "Thank you, Halgren." As Halgren nodded and walked away, Carter turned to Dr. Kim. "I have a good feeling about this," he said. Dr. Kim raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. "Just remember, Carter, it's not just about discoveries. It's about respect and understanding." Carter nodded earnestly. "Absolutely. That's the goal." As the suns began to set, casting long shadows over the alien landscape, Carter felt a surge of anticipation. Zaloria was already proving to be everything he had hoped for, an uncharted world of possibility, and now a potential connection with its most elusive inhabitants. He couldn't wait to see what secrets would unfold. Carter was up early the next morning, his excitement barely contained as he gathered his field equipment. Dr. Kim and Halgren were already waiting outside the temporary lab, discussing the day's plans over steaming cups of local brew that Halgren had brought. "Good morning," Carter greeted, strapping on his field pack. "What's the agenda for today?" Dr. Kim took a sip from her cup before answering. "Halgren has arranged for us to visit a nearby medicinal garden cultivated by his people. It's a preliminary step to understand their botany practices before we even think about approaching the Varelia." "That sounds fascinating," Carter replied, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Ready when you are." The trio made their way toward the village, guided by the soft light of Zaloria's rising suns. The garden was located on the outskirts, nestled against a backdrop of lush rolling hills. As they approached, they were greeted by an elderly man, his face etched with lines of wisdom. "Welcome, friends," the man said, his voice as gentle as the breeze. "I am Marek, the keeper of this garden. Halgren tells me you have an interest in our plants." "Thank you for having us, Marek," Dr. Kim responded warmly. "I'm Dr. Renata Kim, and this is Carter Jacobs. We are indeed very interested in learning about your practices." Marek nodded, leading them through the garden. Rows of exotic plants thrived under his care, each species emitting a unique aroma. "Each plant here has a role, a purpose in our lives," Whether for healing, nutrition, or spiritual use, he explained, pausing to show them a leafy specimen with vibrant blue flowers. Carter knelt down for a closer look. Incredible, he murmured, taking notes. What is this one used for? It's called Lyrina, Marek explained. It helps with sleep and calming the mind. Very powerful. As they moved through the garden, Carter's enthusiasm was palpable. He asked questions, touched leaves with permission, and scribbled copious notes. Dr. Kim conversed with Marek about technical aspects of cultivation, while Halgren occasionally added cultural insights. After the tour, they gathered under a large, flowering tree at the garden's edge. Marek served them a light meal, featuring some of the edible plants they had just seen. Marek, I'm curious, Carter began, his tone respectful. How receptive do you think the Varelia might be to an outsider like me learning about their botanical knowledge? Marek chewed thoughtfully before answering. It is hard to say. The Varelia guard their secrets closely. But with patience and respect, perhaps they will see your genuine interest. Halgren nodded in agreement. Marek's right. Trust is key. We can facilitate an introduction, but from there, it will be up to you to earn their respect. I understand, Carter said. I'm willing to take the time to learn and respect their ways. Dr. Kim looked at him, her expression softening. Carter, just remember, this is not just about adding to your research. It's about building a bridge between cultures. I know, Dr. Kim, Carter replied earnestly. I'm here to learn, not just to take. The conversation lingered on as they enjoyed the natural bounty of Zaloria. Carter felt a deep connection to this alien world, invigorated by the prospect of possibly connecting with the elusive Varelia. As they packed up to leave the garden, he knew that this experience would shape not only his research but his understanding of what it meant to truly engage with another culture. The next few days were a flurry of activity, with Carter spending most of his time in the field, collecting samples and immersing himself in the study of Zaloria's unique flora. One evening, as the twin suns painted the sky with streaks of orange and purple, Halgren approached him with an update that quickened his pulse. Carter, I've spoken to my contact within the Varelia, Halgren announced as they sat outside their temporary lab, examining plant specimens. Really? What did they say? Carter asked, looking up with eager eyes. They've agreed to a meeting, but they want to meet you first, alone, without the rest of the team. It's a test of sorts, Halgren explained, his tone serious. Carter nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. When and where? Tomorrow morning. I'll guide you to the edge of their territory, but then you'll go on alone. Remember, show respect and follow their lead, Halgren instructed. I will. Thank you, Halgren, for arranging this, Carter said, his mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming encounter. The following morning, after a restless night, Carter followed Halgren through dense underbrush and over jagged rocks, each step taking him deeper into the heart of the Varelia's lands. As they reached a clear boundary marked by towering stones, Halgren stopped. This is as far as I go. Beyond this point, you're in their hands. Be careful, Carter, Halgren said, clapping him on the shoulder before turning back. Taking a deep breath, Carter crossed the boundary. He walked through a dense fog that seemed to appear out of nowhere, his heart pounding in his chest. After what felt like an eternity, the fog lifted, revealing a breathtaking valley filled with exotic plants and vibrant colors. In the center of the valley stood a man, seemingly waiting for him. He was tall, with striking features and piercing eyes that seemed to look right through Carter. Welcome, Carter Jacobs, the man said, his voice echoing slightly in the open air. I am Virek, a guardian of the Varelia tribe. Thank you for allowing me to come here, Carter replied, extending his hand in greeting, which Virek took after a moment's hesitation. Why do you seek the knowledge of the Varelia? Virek asked, his gaze unwavering. Carter took a moment to gather his thoughts before answering. I'm here to learn, not just for my own knowledge, but to understand how your practices might benefit others, including your tribe, through mutual respect and exchange. Virek considered this, then gestured for Carter to follow him. Come, let us talk more as we walk. As they strolled through the valley, Virek pointed out various plants, explaining their uses and significance to his people. Carter listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest. Your approach is different from others who have come before you, Virek observed. You seek harmony, not dominion. That's the only way forward, Carter replied, especially when dealing with a culture as rich and deep as the Varelias. Their conversation continued for hours, ranging from scientific discussions about plant biology to philosophical debates about the nature of knowledge and power. As the suns began to set, casting long shadows over the valley, Varric stopped. It is rare to find a human who listens more than he speaks. I will bring your request to the tribe. We will observe you, Carter Jacobs. Prove that your intentions are as sincere as your words. Thank you, Varric. I appreciate the opportunity to prove myself, Carter said, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. As he made his way back to the boundary where Halgren would be waiting, Carter felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had crossed into forbidden territory and had been given a chance to bridge two worlds. The real work, he knew, was just beginning. The sons of Zaloria had barely crested the horizon when Carter and Halgren set out from their camp, their destination a remote area on the fringe of Varelia territory. The morning air was crisp, filled with the subtle sense of alien flora that Carter had grown increasingly familiar with over his stay. Today's the day, huh? Halgren asked as they trekked through the dense undergrowth, his tone a mixture of concern and encouragement. Carter nodded, clutching his notebook a bit tighter. I've been looking forward to this. Thanks for setting it up, Halgren. It's a rare opportunity, Halgren replied. The Varelia are cautious with outsiders. Remember, respect their customs. Listen more than you speak. As they approached the boundary, marked by a series of natural stone pillars covered in bioluminescent moss, Halgren stopped. This is as far as I go. The path ahead is yours alone. Carter took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the opportunity. I'll see you back here by sunset? Sunset. Be careful, Carter, Halgren said, clapping him on the back before turning to leave. Crossing the boundary, Carter followed a narrow path that wove through towering ferns and past trickling streams. The deeper into Varelia territory he went, the more vibrant the landscape became, until he reached a clearing where a man awaited him. You must be Carter Jacobs, the man said, stepping forward with an air of authority, yet his eyes held a hint of curiosity. That's right, Carter replied, extending his hand. And you are? I am Ilos, an envoy of the Varelia, the man said, taking Carter's hand in a firm grip. You seek knowledge of our ways? I do. I'm here to learn, to understand, not just to take, Carter explained, meeting Ilos's gaze directly. Ilos nodded slightly, then turned and gestured for Carter to follow him. They walked side by side, with Ilos pointing out various plants and explaining their significance to Varelia culture. This one, Ilos paused by a bush with luminous violet berries, is used in the initiation rites of our young warriors. It tests their strength, their ability to endure. Fascinating, Carter murmured, taking notes. In my culture, rites of passage are less about endurance and more about knowledge, learning. Ilos looked intrigued. Learning is a lifelong journey for us as well. Perhaps there is common ground between our peoples. As they continued, Carter asked about the architecture of the Varelia homes they passed, noting their integration with the natural environment. We build with the land, not against it, Ilos explained. Each structure is part of a greater whole. That's a philosophy I can appreciate, Carter said, his respect for the Varelia deepening with each shared word. They reached a large water body, shimmering under Zaloria's suns. Ilos halted, and the conversation shifted towards the deeper aspects of Varelia's spirituality linked to water. Water is sacred to us, is life-giving and life-sustaining. It teaches us about adaptation and flow, Ilos said, his voice reflective. I've noticed that, Carter replied. Back on Earth, many cultures revere water similarly. It's a universal symbol. Ilos smiled, the first Carter had seen since their meeting. Perhaps you are not so different, Carter Jacobs. As the suns began to dip towards the horizon, Ilos's demeanor softened. It is time for you to return. I will speak to the council about your request. Your approach today has been respectful. Thank you, Ilos. I hope to return to learn more, Carter said, feeling a mixture of relief and hope. As Carter made his way back to the meeting point, he felt a profound connection to this alien culture, a sense of shared understanding that transcended the differences between their worlds. He was eager to relay everything to Dr. Kim and Halgren, hopeful for what the future might bring. By the time Carter returned to the rendezvous point, the sons of Zaloria were casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. Halgren was already there, waiting with a concerned look that relaxed as soon as he saw Carter approaching. How did it go? Halgren asked, helping Carter offload his backpack. Better than I could have hoped, Carter replied, a weary but satisfied smile on his face. Ilas, the envoy, was more open than I expected. We talked about everything from plant uses to Varelia architecture. Halgren nodded, visibly relieved. That's good to hear. It sounds like you made a strong impression. I try to be as respectful and open-minded as possible. I think it helped, Carter said as they began their walk back to camp. Ilas even smiled at the end. He said he'd speak to the council about continuing our interactions. Back at the camp, Dr. Kim greeted them with a pot of freshly brewed local tea. You're back early. Everything went smoothly, I take it? Carter recounted the day's events while Dr. Kim listened intently, nodding along. It sounds like you've managed to tread lightly, which is exactly what we need in these early stages, she remarked once he finished. Yes, and Ilas mentioned something about water and its spiritual significance to them. It got me thinking about possible collaborative projects that respect and incorporate their beliefs, Carter suggested, pouring himself a cup of tea. That's an excellent idea, Dr. Kim agreed. Perhaps a study on the ecosystemic impact of their water usage practices could serve both our research and their tradition. The following days were busy as Carter and Halgren worked on a proposal for such a study, hoping it would facilitate deeper engagement with the Varelia. Carter spent his evenings reviewing notes and refining his understanding of Varelian culture. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of indigo, Halgren approached Carter with an update. I spoke with Ilas today. The council is intrigued by your proposal. They've invited you to a meeting tomorrow to present your ideas directly to them. That's great news, Carter exclaimed, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. I'll need to prepare. Halgren, could you help me fine-tune the presentation? I want to make sure everything is perfect. Of course, Halgren replied. Let's go over your notes now. We need to ensure that your points align with their values and expectations. They sat under the glow of bioluminescent lamps, poring over documents, and discussing key points late into the night. Halgren offered insights into Varelia communication styles and decision-making processes, which Carter absorbed eagerly. The next morning, Carter felt prepared but anxious as they approached the Varelia meeting place, a large, open pavilion surrounded by natural water bodies reflecting the morning light. Ilas greeted them warmly. Welcome, Carter Jacobs. The council awaits your words. As Carter began to speak, he noticed several council members nodding thoughtfully. He explained how the study could help preserve water resources while respecting and highlighting Varelian spiritual practices. When he finished, there was a moment of silence, then a burst of discussion among the council members. Ilas finally turned to Carter, a serious expression on his face. Your respect for our ways is clear, Carter Jacobs. We will deliberate and give you our answers soon. As they left the pavilion, Halgren clapped Carter on the back. You did well. Now we wait. Yes, Carter said, feeling hopeful. We wait. Back at camp, the weight of the day's efforts weighed on him, but the possibility of bridging two worlds kept his spirits high. The following morning brought a quiet tension to the camp as everyone awaited the Varelia Council's decision. Carter paced outside his tent, trying to distract himself with the surrounding flora, but his thoughts were fixated on the day's possibilities. Dr. Kim noticed his anxiety as she approached with her morning tea. Nervous, she asked, her tone gentle. More than I expected, Carter admitted, accepting the cup she offered him. I just hope they see the potential benefits for both our cultures. Just then, Halgren emerged from the direction of the communications tent with a broad smile. Carter, they've agreed. The Varelia Council wants to proceed with the collaboration. Carter's heart leapt. Really? That's fantastic. Yes, and there's more, Halgren continued. They've invited you to attend a ceremonial gathering tonight. It's a chance to formally begin our partnership and for you to be introduced to the broader community. The rest of the day was a blur of preparations. Halgren advised Carter on proper ceremonial etiquette and helped him select an appropriate gift, a collection of botanical prints from Earth that Carter had brought as a cultural exchange. As the suns began to dip below the horizon, Carter, dressed in a simple but respectful outfit, followed Halgren through the verdant paths that led to the Varelia community's central gathering area. The space was alive with light and color, adorned with luminescent plants and floating lanterns. Ilas met them at the entrance. Carter Jacobs, welcome. Tonight, you are our honored guest. The ceremony began with traditional Varelia music, a haunting melody that resonated in the crisp night air. Carter was introduced to various members of the tribe, each more curious than the last about the man who had crossed cultural boundaries to stand among them. During a lull in the festivities, Ilas guided Carter to a small circle of elders. Carter, these are the keepers of lore, the wise ones who safeguard our traditions. Carter bowed respectfully. I'm honored to meet you all. I bring a gift from my people, a collection of botanical knowledge that I hope will enrich our shared understanding. The elders accepted his gift with a nod of approval, leafing through the prints with evident interest. As the ceremony continued, Carter found himself beside a young Varelian named Jurek, who seemed particularly interested in Earth's ecology. You really came from another world to learn from us? Jurek asked, his tone a mixture of skepticism and wonder. Yes, Jurek. I believe that by learning from each other, we can create something greater than the sum of our knowledge, Carter explained, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. Jurek nodded thoughtfully. Many of us were unsure about opening our community like this. But seeing your respect and eagerness to understand, it gives hope that this is right. The evening ended with a communal feast, where Carter was invited to partake in traditional Varelia dishes, each ingredient explained by Ilas. These foods are more than sustenance. They're a part of our identity, Ilas said as Carter sampled a particularly spicy stew. I can see that, Carter replied, his taste buds tingling. Every flavor seems to tell a story. As they walked back to the camp later that night, Halbrand clapped Carter on the shoulder. You've made quite an impression tonight. Well done. Carter looked back at the twinkling lights of the gathering space, feeling a deep sense of connection and responsibility. Thanks, Halbrand. It feels like this is just the beginning. The collaboration between Carter and the Varelia tribe deepened over the following weeks. His days were filled with intense study and exchanges of knowledge. Yet, it was during the quieter moments of personal interaction where the true understanding blossomed. One such evening, as Carter worked late in the temporary lab, Halbrand dropped by with an update. You've been invited to join Ilas tomorrow. He wants to show you a sacred site, rarely seen by outsiders. That sounds incredible, Carter responded, his eyes lighting up. What's the occasion? Ilas mentioned it's a place of great personal significance to him and a testament to Varelian spiritual beliefs. He believes sharing it with you will further solidify our partnership. The next day, Carter met Ilas at the edge of a dense forest, the morning sun casting dappled shadows on the path ahead. This place we are going to, Ilas started as they walked, is where we believe the spirit of Zaloria speaks most clearly. Carter listened intently, his recorder capturing every word, respecting the gravity of the moment. I'm honored you're sharing this with me, Ilas. The path led them to a clearing where light streamed through an opening in the canopy, illuminating a solitary tree that seemed ancient, its trunk twisted with time. Around its base, small offerings had been placed, a mix of fruits and vibrant flowers. Ilas sat and gestured for Carter to do the same. This tree is old, older than any living Varelia. We come here to listen, to learn from the past. Carter, observing the solemnity, remained silent, allowing Ilas to continue in his own time. After my father passed, I came here often, Ilas shared, his voice softening. He was a leader, much respected. I sought guidance here, seeking to fill his shoes. That's a heavy weight to carry, Carter replied, understanding the burden of expectations. Yes, but this place gave me peace, helped me find my path. I hope, in sharing it with you, you understand more deeply who we are. I'm beginning to see the depth of your connection to this land, Carter said, looking around at the peaceful setting. It's not just land to you. It's a living history, a guide. Ilas nodded. Exactly. Just as your science seeks to understand the world through facts and figures, we seek understanding through spirits and stories. They spent the afternoon discussing philosophy, science, and the intersections of their perspectives. As the sun began to set, Ilas stood, offering Carter a hand up. Let's return. Tonight, there is a gathering, and we would like you to join. At the gathering, Carter was introduced to more members of the tribe, each sharing stories of their ancestors and the sacred site. The atmosphere was warm, inclusive, and filled with laughter and song. Later, sitting by the fire with Halgren, Carter shared his experiences. Today changed something in me. I felt a connection, not just to Ilas and the others, but to their way of life. Halgren smiled, watching the flames flicker. That's how understanding begins, not just with knowledge, but with feelings, with shared moments. Carter nodded, his gaze lost in the fire. It's more than I hoped for. I feel like I'm no longer just a visitor. You're becoming a part of their story, Carter. And they, a part of yours, Halgren concluded, clapping him gently on the back. As the night deepened, the fire's warm glow reflected off the faces around him, each one a new friend, a new chapter in a shared journey of discovery and respect. The project between Carter and the Varelia had been progressing smoothly, with both sides benefiting from the cultural exchange. However, the peace was disrupted one morning when Dr. Kim and Halgren approached Carter with news of a troubling development. "We've received some concerns from other members of the Varelia Council," Dr. Kim said, her expression serious as they sat down outside their makeshift lab. "What kind of concerns?" Carter asked, his brow furrowing. "Some feel that the sharing of sacred sites and rituals might be diluting their cultural purity," Halgren explained. "They fear too much exposure to our ways might lead to unwanted changes." Carter nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to address this. Perhaps we can arrange a meeting with the council to reassure them of our intentions?" "That's a good idea," Dr. Kim agreed. "I'll help you prepare. We need to show them that this partnership respects and protects their culture, not threatens it." Later that day, Carter, Dr. Kim, and Halgren met with the Varelia Council in the same pavilion where Carter had first presented his research proposal. The mood was tense as they gathered, the council members wearing expressions of concern. Carter began, choosing his words carefully. "We've come to understand that there are worries about our presence and the impact it may have on your traditions. Please, let us discuss these openly. Our goal is to learn from each other, not to overtake or overshadow your ways." Ilas, who had supported the collaboration from the start, spoke up. "Carter has shown great respect for our ways. The knowledge shared has been mutual and done with care." Another council member, a stern-looking elder named Torin, leaned forward. "Respect is one thing, but the preservation of our culture is another. How do we ensure that our traditions are not merely novelties to be observed, but are maintained with the sanctity they deserve?" Carter listened intently, then responded. "Perhaps we can establish guidelines, agreed upon by both our teams and your council, that outline how knowledge is shared and used. We want to ensure it's done ethically and sustainably." Torin nodded slightly, considering this. "That is a start. But we need more than just guidelines. We need commitments. What if we include cultural liaisons from the Varelia in our team?" Halgren suggested. "They can oversee our activities, ensuring that everything we do aligns with your cultural values and norms." The council murmured among themselves, the idea sparking interest. "This liaison could also help communicate the benefits of our collaboration back to the tribe," Ilas added, supporting Halgren's proposal. The discussion continued, with Carter and his team working to address each concern. By the end of the meeting, the council agreed to a trial period for the liaison role, with Torin volunteering to oversee its implementation. As they walked back to camp, Carter felt a cautious optimism. "Thank you both," he said to Dr. Kim and Halgren. "Today could have gone very differently without your support." "It was a necessary step," Dr. Kim replied. "Building trust is a continuous process, especially in a context as delicate as this." Halgren nodded. "It's about showing that we're here not just to take, but to give back and grow together." That night, as Carter documented the day's events in his journal, he realized how complex and rewarding the intercultural exchange had become. He was not just a researcher. He was now a bridge builder, tasked with the delicate balance of honoring tradition while fostering collaboration. The challenges were significant, but the potential for a meaningful partnership was greater than he had ever imagined. The trial period with the cultural liaison, Torin, had been a resounding success. Over several weeks, the integration of Varelian oversight brought new depths to the collaborative project, blending Carter's scientific approach with the Varelia's rich traditions. As the project neared its conclusion, the team gathered in the Varelia Pavilion for a final meeting. Carter, alongside Dr. Kim and Halgren, faced the council with a mixture of anticipation and melancholy. The suns of Zaloria dipped low, casting long shadows and bathing the pavilion in a warm, golden light. Ilas opened the meeting, his voice resonant and warm. "We have seen much growth and understanding blossom from this union. Carter, your respect for our ways has opened many doors." Carter nodded, his heart heavy with the impending departure. "I came here seeking knowledge, but I leave with much more, a profound respect and a deep connection with the Varelia people. This experience has changed me fundamentally." Torin, who had initially been skeptical, now offered a grudging nod of respect. "Your willingness to adapt and embrace our guidance has shown us the value of this collaboration. We are prepared to continue this partnership, exploring further areas of mutual interest." Dr. Kim smiled, her eyes reflecting pride in her protege. "We are grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow together. The guidelines we've developed for cultural exchange will serve as a model for future projects." Halgren, ever the bridge between the two cultures, added, "This project may be ending, but the bonds we've formed will inform our approaches and ambitions for years to come." As the discussion turned to the specifics of future collaborations, Carter found himself observing the faces around him, no longer strangers but colleagues and friends. The meeting concluded with the signing of a new agreement, officiating the continuation of their joint efforts. Afterwards, as the council members mingled with Carter's team, Elas pulled Carter aside. "You have been more than a visitor here, Carter. You've become a part of our community, and though you leave, your impact remains." Carter felt a surge of emotion. "Thank you, Elas. I hope to return someday. Until then, I'll carry the lessons and friendships I've made here with me." The farewell was bittersweet. As Carter prepared for departure the next day, he spent one last evening walking through the gardens he'd helped study and preserve. The plants, once foreign, now felt familiar, each one a reminder of the time spent and the knowledge shared. The morning of departure, the entire Varelia tribe gathered to see him off. As he boarded the transport, Carter looked back at the gathered faces, feeling the weight of their shared experiences. Halgren clasped his shoulder, offering a final piece of advice. "Keep learning, keep respecting, and keep bridging worlds, Carter. You've got a rare gift." With a final wave, Carter settled into his seat, the spacecraft lifting off and rising above the vibrant landscape of Zaloria. He watched until the planet was a mere speck against the stars, his thoughts already turning to the next adventure, enriched forever by the tribe that everyone had feared but he had come to love.